مين رسولا منهم يتلو عليهم آياته ويزكيهم ويعلمهم الكتاب والحكمة وإن كانوا من قبل لفي ضلال مبين وآخرين منهم لما يلحقوا بهم وهو العزيز الحكيم ذلك فضل الله يؤتيه من يشاء والله ذو الفضل العظيم مثل الذين حملوا التوراة ثم لم يحملوها كمثل الحمار يحمل أسفارا بئس مثل القوم الذين كفروا بآيات الله والله لا يهدي القوم الظالمين قل يا أيها الذين هادوا إن زعمتم أنكم أولياء لله من دون الناس فتمنوا الموت إن كنتم صادقين ولا يتمنونه أبدا بما قدمت أيديهم والله عليم بالظالمين قل إن الموت الذي تفرون منه فإنه ملاقيكم ثم تردون إلى عالم الغيب والشهادة فينبئكم بما كنتم تعلمون يا أيها الذين آمنوا إذا نودي للصلاة من يوم الجمعة فاسعوا إلى ذكر الله وذروا البيع ذلكم خير لكم إن كنتم تعلمون فإذا قضيت الصلاة فانتشروا في الأرض وابتغوا من فضل الله واذكروا الله كثيرا لعلكم تفلحون وإذا رأوا تجارة أو لهوا انفضوا إليها وتركوك قائما قل ما عند الله خير من اللهو ومن التجارة والله خير الرازقين صدق الله العلي العظيم.
Jazakallah, Brother Zunair. I would now like to request Brother Wajid Hassan to please come forward and recite a salam with a loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad wa ajil faraj.
बर मोहम्मद वाले मोहम्मद सलवात शबीर को खालिक ने सकीना जो अता की ज़ैनब किसी सूरत थी उस आले अबा की ज़ैनब किसी सूरत थी उस माहे लक़ा की جس دم گودی میں اسے لا کے چچا کی، جس دم دیا گودی میں اسے لا کے چچا کی، عباس نے ہاتھوں کو اٹھا کر یہ دعا کی، رکھے تجھے اے لاڈلی اللہ سلام، دنیا میں رہے سر پہ تیرے شاہ سلام، اللہم صلی علی محمد بر محمد والے محمد صلی اللہ ہے سلام اس پہ جو کہتی تھی صدا اے حسین ہے سلام اس پہ جو کہتی تھی صدا حسین، ظالموں نے تجھے پانی نہ دیا، اے حسین ہے سلام اس پہ جو علی اکبر نے تیرے سامنے برچھی کھائی، قتل اصغر تیرے ہاتھوں پہ ہوا، اے حسین ہے سلام اس پہ جو نہ رہا کوئی جنازے کا اٹھانے والا، تن زخمی تیرا تیروں پہ رہا، اے حسین ہے سلام اس پہ جو کہتی تھی صدا، اے حسین گھوڑے دوڑائے لعینوں نے تیرے لاشے پر، جیسے تو صبت پیمبر ہی نہ تھا، اے حسین ہے سلام اس پہ جو جل گئے خیمے چھنی چادر سامان لٹا، بعد تیرے ہوئی ہم پر یہ جفا، اے حسین ہے سلام उस पे जो कहती थी सदा हाय हुसैन जिस जगह ख़ैमाए ज़ैनब था वहाँ से अब तक रात को आती है कानों में सदा हाय हुसैन है सलाम उस पे जो कहती थी सदा हाय हुसैन ज़ालिमों ने तुझे पानी न दिया हाय हुसैन है सलाम उस पे जो बर मोहम्मद वाले सलावत
Jazakallah Wajid uncle. That was a beautiful recitation. One more loud salawat for Brother Wajid Hussain. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajil farajahum. Before I request Sheikh Amin to the member, just a quick reminder, our program for tomorrow will also start early, 6:30 p.m. And this is a 2-night event commemorating the martyrdom of Lady Sakina binte Hussain alayhi salam. We do have Shabadari programs and a private majlis arranged by Dr. Akbar Rizvi and Anjuman Sher Khuda later today and tomorrow. Those programs are scheduled to start at 9 p.m. And inshallah, next weekend we will be commemorating Arba'in Imam Hussain alayhi salam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad wa ajil farajahum, with speeches by Sheikh Mahdi Rastani. A detailed schedule for those programs will be sent out during the week, inshallah. I would now like to request for everybody to recite a Surah Fatiha for the marhameen of tonight's program sponsors. And let us all please include all our marhameen and the marhameen of the Ummah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah. Let us all now request Sheikh Amin to please come to the member with a loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad wa ajil.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب قلوبنا وشفيع ذنوبنا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد اللهم صل على محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين واللعن الدائم على أعدائهم أجمعين صلى الله عليك يا أبا عبد الله. I thank Allah for this opportunity, inshallah, to have a discussion with all of you. Usually, when I'm speaking here, I'll have to come up with new content, yes. Things that you will have to think about and spend a lot of time on. So inshallah we can benefit tonight. There is a line that we've heard all our lives, which is that Imam Hussain saved Islam, correct? Imam Hussain saved Islam. But when you start talking to people, or you think about it yourself, you find a lot of things that will go against this line of Imam Hussain saved Islam. Not that he didn't, but we need to figure some things out, because if we don't figure them out, all it takes is for some person to ask us this question of, okay, so how did he save Islam? I'm very interested to know. And if we don't know how he actually saved Islam, or what the actual active ingredient in the protection of Islam was, what we're going to do is we're going to cause more damage than help, and we might even undermine the whole thing. And so in these 2 nights we want to talk about this, inshallah. There will be a minimalist answer, and there will be a maximalist answer. And what I want to illustrate, inshallah, that in all of these cases, what we will have is the same answer to this question. Something that sometimes we won't give enough importance to, but in reality that was the active ingredient in Imam Hussain protecting Islam. What are those things that come up that will sometimes tell us otherwise? That will sometimes prove to us, apparently, that, and at first glance, that no, I don't understand how Imam Hussain saved Islam. Because if we were to ask ourselves that question, what are the things that we can say to this? Well, Imam Hussain, he rose so that Islamic laws can be adhered to. Inshallah, if we have time, which we probably won't, I can get into some examples of how Islamic law after Imam Hussain, nothing changed. No one cared about Islam that much. We have some crazy stories about things that were happening in Imam Sajjad's time, to the point that the same concept of how after Imam Ali there's a famous hadith that there were only a few proper followers of the Imam, we have the same kind of hadith for Imam Sajjad's time. Very interesting. That everyone, irtadda nas, everyone went away again. You thought it was only Saqifa? No. After Imam Hussein's time, we have the same problem again. That there's like 3 or 4 that are only mentioned. Like the likes of Abu Khalid al-Kabuli and other ones that are seen as the companions, real companions of Imam Sajjad. You would think that if Imam Hussain saved Islam, that after his death, what's going to happen? Everyone's going to wake up. They're going to overthrow Bani Umayyah. So someone might say, well, Bani Umayyah were overthrown. That's how he saved Islam. Well, excuse me. If you really want to attribute the protection of Islam to Imam Hussain and Ashura, what's supposed to happen is right after Ashura, there's a revolt. Everyone wakes up from Hijaz all the way to Sham, correct? And they overthrow Bani Umayyah. But guess what? How many years after Ashura were Bani Umayyah in power? 71 years. So how does this saving Islam work? If they bring that up to us, what do we say as Shia in response to this? No Imam ever ruled again after Imam al-Hassan. Someone might say Imam Hussain, he did what he did so the Imams can come back to power. Well, did that happen? No Imam ruled after Imam Hassan alayhi salam. To the point that when it reaches our 12th Imam, Imam Sahib al-Zaman alayhi salatu was-salam, what happens is that he even, the hadiths say this, these are in books of Al-Ghaibah, they are there, that he, out of fear for his life, went into occultation. Correct? So this is not how he saved Islam either, it seems. So how did Imam Hussain save Islam? This is a question, right? I'll just give you one example. This Bani Umayyah that we're always cursing, and we're saying that Imam Hussain wanted to get rid of them. Yes? I'll give you one example of this individual by the name of Abdul Malik bin Marwan, one of the ones who ruled the most after Ashura. Okay? So you have Yazid dying a couple, 2-3 years after Ashura. And then after that, Marwan takes over. His son is Abdul Malik bin Marwan, who eventually takes over. 20-something years, I think he ruled, if I'm not mistaken. Abdul Malik, it says that once he comes to power, he defeats, of course, Abdullah bin Zubayr, long story, okay, who was a contender to the throne, let's call it. You know, these days everyone's talking about thrones and stuff, right? A contender to the throne of Khilafah. He overthrew Abdullah bin Zubayr in Mecca. They killed him. Okay. So 2 years after defeating Abdullah bin Zubair, he visits Medina on his Hajj trip. What does he say to the people? All right? If someone's going to say Imam Hussain saved Islam, let's see what happened after Imam Hussain. Do we have an answer for this or not? He says to the people of Medina, I am not like the belittled Khalifa, Zalil. Like who does he mean by that? Uthman. Uthman, according to them, was very nice, just didn't want to cause any trouble. Old man eventually got killed, because he just wasn't willing to put his foot down and kill others so they don't kill him. So he says this is the belittled one. They belittled him. I'm not like him. I'm not like the easygoing Khalifa Muawiyah. Right? Muawiyah, after Siffin, he never had any other confrontation. Yes, 20 years he ruled peacefully, they say. To the point that when he died, some of his bros, they said, the one who united the ummah has died. Yeah? Because there was no fighting for 20 years. Gosh, Imam Ali was Khalifa for 3-4 years. How many civil wars and battles took place? That's what they say. We don't say this. We say this, there was a reason for this. 20 years of peace and easygoingness of the Khalifa Muawiyah. I'm not like him. And not like the unintelligent Khalifa, he says. I'm not like him either. Who's he talking about? Yazid. Now this Abdul Malik al-Marwan bin Marwan, he's a Bani Umayyah at the end of the day. Okay? He says, I'm not like these Khulafa. Well, what are you going to do? He says, I will only fix these people with the sword. Saving Islam, saving the people, I don't see that. From now on, by God, whosoever calls me to taqwa, I will behead them. Mind you, this is a guy, Abdul Malik bin Marwan, you've probably heard this story from me before. He's that Khalifa who, before becoming Khalifa, he was, they say, Kabutar Masjid. He was the pigeon of the masjid. In other words, that's where he's always residing, reciting Quran and dua, mashallah. MashaAllah. But what happened? They told him, hey, Pops is dead, Baba is dead, you're the Khalifa. They say he closed the Quran, he says, I'm done with you. I'm done with you. And man, this guy, look at him. He says here now, once he's in power, he says, if anyone says to me, have taqwa, okay, I will behead them. And so by saying this, what's he trying to say here? These ulama have explained what he meant here. When throughout the week is it that the Muslims will hear this word or this line of, I encourage all of you to, yes, have taqwa throughout your lives? When is it that we hear this line? Salatul Jum'ah. It's wajib. It is a wajib shari that the Imam of the khutbahs and Jum'ah has to say this in both khutbahs. Remind the people, fear Allah, remember Allah, be careful, don't disobey Allah. He says, if anyone from now on tells me to have taqwa, I'm going to behead them. In other words, don't uphold the sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Don't uphold it. So now here, one of our historians, he says, clearly, if the one who claims to be the Khalifa of the Muslims says such things in the city of the Prophet, and next to his grave, and attacks his sunnah like this, you can only figure and imagine what his appointees in different cities and provinces will do and say. This is big boss man in Medina, next to the greatest of the creation of Allah, and his grave. This is what he says. This is how he's speaking to the people. And he's implying that the sunnah of Rasulullah, if you uphold it, I will behead you. So this is right after Karbala, a few years after Karbala and Ashura. So here we are saying Imam Hussain saved Islam. This is the Islam that was saved. We have a problem. It seems we have a problem and a discrepancy that we have to figure out. And that's what we want to talk about. And there is an answer to all of this, by the way. So if anyone gets up and leaves in the middle of the majlis, I just want you to know there was an answer, okay? But sometimes to understand the answer properly, you have to understand the question properly and the challenge properly. That's what we're trying to do right now. All of these things are discrepancies. I don't see any change. Should I share with you some of this stuff? Maybe later if we have time, I'll share with you some of those things that show that it was horrible after Ashura. No one cared. While when you say Islam was saved and protected, the first thing that comes to mind is there was an awakening. Everyone is still in slumber. So before I get into the discussion itself, there's one little disclaimer here. the topic of what was Imam Hussein's aim in everything that he did is one that is heavily disputed. Okay? And there are different opinions here. And the answer we give to this question of how did Imam Hussain protect or save Islam will be very strongly tied to our opinion on what his aim was. Why did he leave Medina? Why did he leave Mecca? Why did he go towards Kufa when he knows Kufans are not very reliable? It depends on all of these things. But this is where that minimalist answer that I talked about in the beginning, or I mentioned, comes into the picture. That we can come to a conclusion that will cover all of these bases. Whatever opinion I have regarding why Imam Hussain did what he did. Some of you might say, oh really, there's a difference of opinion on that? Yes, brothers and sisters. Let me just give you one little example. That there's even an opinion out there that we have no clue why Imam Hussain did what he did. All we know is that there was this irfani maqam and rank that Allah had promised Imam Hussain. And he had told him the only way you can reach this rank is if you get killed. So it's just all about irfan and stuff, to this extent, okay? So there are different opinions here. But we're going to try to come to a conclusion that will cover all those bases, the minimalist. And then tomorrow night, inshallah, we want to go maximum. So that everyone's happy. The ones who have a very political approach to Karbala, the ones who have other approaches to Karbala, we can also cover all of that, inshallah. Recite salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Another salawat that gives me energy, inshallah. All right. So after that disclaimer, let us inshallah jump in, brothers and sisters. There are two dimensions, at least, that we want to talk about. To Ashura and Karbala. One way to look at Ashura, look at Imam Hussain, look at his movement, if you want to call it a movement, okay, is to look at Imam Hussain as a person who says, no matter what, I am not going to give bay'ah. Finished. Another way to look at it, another aspect of Karbala, Ashura, is the massacre of Karbala, the bloodshed, the zulm, the atrocities and tragedies, the masa'ib. That's another aspect of it. Usually what we do is we will say that Imam Hussain saved Islam. It had a lot to do with the second aspect. The fact that there was bloodshed, the fact that there was tragedy, and this is what awakened everyone. But as I said, no one was awakened really. Yes, 1400 years later, me and you are awakened, inshallah. But it didn't happen right away. And I'm pretty sure Imam Hussain had some fruits in mind and goals and aims in mind that were supposed to happen right after him. Not for 1400 years later only. We always look at that second aspect of Karbala and Ashura or Imam Hussain. We kind of take away from the value of the fact that just the lack of bay'ah is actually the main ingredient in all of this. And to prove this point, and brothers and sisters, this is not set in stone. You can think about this. We can think about this together and see what we come to. But I'm just sharing this idea with all of us. That I want to dissect this in two stages, okay? 2 stages. Stage number 1, to figure out how not giving bay'ah saved Islam, let us turn on that imagination of ours. Kind of like these choose your own adventure books. Remember those of us who were in the 90s? Alhamdulillah, I was born in the 90s. These kids don't know all the good stuff we had. Turn on our imaginations. What do they call them? Creative cap? Something like that. They said, put on your thinking cap. That's what it was. Let's put that on and think, what if, let's make a story up for ourselves, that they came to Imam Hussain in Medina. They said, give bay'ah to Yazid. And he said, ala rasi wal ayn. Yes, I give bay'ah to Yazid. Let us see what would have happened afterwards. Okay? That's one way to see that this lack of bay'ah stopped all of that from happening that our imagination is going to think of. And to further this point, push it further, second stage of our discussion, which will be, let us also imagine, what if Imam Hussain had not given bay'ah and just passed away a natural death 2 years later, 1 year later, 2 months later, whatever. This is very important, because this is going to help us understand how lack of bay'ah is so important. That even if Imam Hussain had died a natural death, it would have still done what it needed to do. But yes, there is no doubting and denying that Ashura and the bloodshed and all of that pushed this idea of Imam Hussain not giving bay'ah and not being okay with the status quo. This is super important as well. No one wants to discount that. And I'm hoping the brothers and sisters, are going to look at this more intellectually enough to understand that separating these layers from each other is not taking away from the value of any of these different stages and aspects of Ashura. We're trying to put our finger exactly on the active ingredient though. And yes, that active ingredient of not giving bay'ah is strengthened by the fact that it wasn't just Imam Hussain said, I'm not going to give bay'ah. He went to the end, to the limits, and gave everything for that purpose as well. But in the end, what is it that stops a cancer from spreading? It is the lack of bay'ah. In other words, brothers and sisters, this is how I'm going to start this discussion. That Imam Hussain doesn't want his name ever to be in the same line and sentence of Yazid as someone who approves of Yazid. La'natullahi alayhi. This is where we will begin our discussion. Give me another salawat, please. Let's imagine what would have happened if this bay'ah was given, God forbid. If this bay'ah was given, what would happen? Well, 20 years of Muawiyah we had, doing his thing. Okay? As the stepping stone for the later Bani Umayyah who come to power to continue their thing. Muawiyah dies. Okay, Muawiyah dies. Yazid comes to power at what age? Can anyone tell me? How old was Yazid when he came to power? Around how old was he? 33-ish, something like that. 33, man, and these guys are living the life. Let's give him 30 years, give or take. 63 years, he'll die. Think about it, brothers and sisters. 30 years of Yazid in power, plus 20 years of Muawiyah in power, 50 years. That's half a century in that day and age. What's going to happen to Islam? There are 3 stages, I want to say, political Islam, if we look at Islam politically, that we had. And we look at what the Ahlul Bayt did. And then we see why Imam Hussain gets pushed to that limit and to that point of giving up everything. Right? We have from Saqifa till Uthman, and how the Ahlul Bayt, namely Imam Ali alayhi salam, dealt with all of this. And then we have from Imam Ali till Imam Hassan, the rule of the Ahlul Bayt. Those 3-4 years of Imam Ali and the 6 months of Imam al-Hassan, and then after that, okay? We want to talk about what would have happened after that. Now, and when Muawiyah dies. What happens during the time of Saqifa? We all know, Saqifa till Uthman, Imam Ali, I'm going to speak on his behalf here. He says that, look, power was not given to me. Not even a minute it was given to me. Okay? The Prophet passes away. I'm somewhere else. Those guys are making decisions somewhere else. And power is given. Okay. It was never given to me to begin with. Fine. I will keep the expediency, the maslaha of Muslim ummah in mind. Okay? And he says this all the way till Uthman's time. When Uthman is chosen in that 6-person council, what does Imam Ali say in Nahj al-Balagha? He said, لَقَدْ عَلِمْتُمْ أَنِّي أَحَقُّ بِهَا مِنْ غَيْرِي. You all know that I'm more deserving of this than others, namely Uthman. But وَوَاللَّهِ لَأَسْلِمَنَّ مَا سَلِمَتْ أُمُورُ الْمُسْلِمِينَ. As long as things are peaceful and good for the affairs of the Muslims are taken care of and they remain intact, and there is no oppression in it except to myself personally, you took khilafah from me, so you're oppressing me. But if that's the only oppression I see, I'm fine. Let the affairs of the Muslims continue. In other words, it's as if Imam Ali is saying, don't worry, my turn will come and I will undo everything. But because power never came to me, I'm not going to fight anyone. Versus when I am in power now. Let's go to the second part of political Islam after the Prophet's time. The politics then change all of a sudden. Imam Ali, who is keeping quiet, he's fine with everything as long as everything's peaceful, Muslims are taken care of, he's fine, he's cool. Because he feels that he's going to come to power, he'll change things. All of a sudden though, when he has the khilafah, he's not giving it up anymore. He's not going to give it up. To the point that the first civil wars are happening. I don't have a problem. I will fight now. You're the same Ali who had no problem. For the good of the greater good, you were quiet, you were silent. Be silent here too. Let Muawiyah take care of Sham. You take care of the rest of the Muslim empire. What's the big deal? No. That's not how it works. Once the power is handed over to the right person, it is not to be taken away anymore. And so here, all of a sudden, Imam Ali is a different Imam Ali. Bloodshed. Jamal Siffin, Nahrawan was something on the side. It was the fries on the side. He wanted to go back to the main course, the main meal, which was Muawiyah, but then they killed him before he could. Imam Hassan takes the banner now. He's going after Muawiyah. They stop him too. They don't let him do what he wants to do. This is the context we're in right now. When the power goes in the right hands, it's not supposed to go out of those hands anymore, no matter who pays what price. Okay? Now, but Muawiyah, he pushes Imam Hassan to the limit that he has to relinquish. This is where it's really bitter. It is really bitter. Imam Hassan has no choice but to give it all up. He gives it all up, brothers and sisters. You know what that means? He gives it all up. Can't say things on the minbar sometimes because people might get upset, but he gives it all up, brothers and sisters. To the point that his own followers and companions, what do they call him after that? Assalamu alayka ya mudhilla al-mu'minin. Oh, the one who gave zillat and brought about zillat and lowliness to the mu'mineen. How could you do such a thing? How could you betray us? These are big companions. The ones that they say said this line are people like Hujr bin Adi, the ones that Muawiyah killed later. These are big companions. Now, they say that they learned after some time that they were mistaken, of course. But hey, so everyone understands that, look, there's a big problem with relinquishing khilafah. Now, when Imam Hassan has no choice but to relinquish, because that's not the rule, you're supposed to fight till the end, unless there's something very crazy that you have to give it all up for. When he does that, look what happens, brothers and sisters. And we're moving towards Imam Hussain, okay? What happens is that people start to think Imam Hassan is okay with Muawiyah. I mean, till today, brothers and sisters, hate to break it to you, right? They will say Muawiyah and Hassanain alayhim as-salam were in love with each other. Like they really loved each other. Like more than the people in Siffin who were against Imam Ali's side loved Imam Ali, they say. I don't know how that works. But they'll say that in the battle of Siffin, the side of Imam Ali and the side of Muawiyah, these two loved each other, but they were fighting over whatever it was. Even more than that, Muawiyah and Hassanain loved each other, na'udhu billah. That Muawiyah would send so much money to them, gifts. There will be even some accounts that he would bring them to Sham and take care of them there even. Okay? Do we believe in these things or that? No, we have our own take on this whole thing, whether it happened or not, or if it happened, what the reasons are for it. But all in all, brothers and sisters, people start to think that Imam Hassan is okay with Muawiyah. This is the guy that was trying his best to kill Muawiyah. Everyone says they love him. He loves him, no one loves him. It's all love. Especially Muawiyah. Okay, so now, what else do we have? When Imam Hassan relinquishes it to Muawiyah, you know what Muawiyah teaches people? He teaches ideology to them. He says, look, if Allah didn't want me to be Khalifa, I wouldn't have been Khalifa. Allah wants me to be Khalifa. So this whole idea of Jabr comes into the picture as well. He brings God into the picture. He says, look, Ahl Bayt are fine with me. God is also fine with me. And then before you know it, some people are believing that because they are Quraysh, because Bani Umayyah are Quraysh, because they are related to the Prophet, and they are cousins and distant cousins with him, people start to actually in Sham believe that, according to some of our historians, that Ahl Bayt equals Bani Umayyah. Jesus Christ. How does that happen? Well, it happens, brothers and sisters. Give people enough time, it will happen. Imam Hassan has no choice, so he signs that treaty. Muawiyah, you give him 20 years, all of this he can pull off till the point that now the Khalifa, as some of you have pointed out to me before, the Khalifa becomes the actual religious authority of everything. Like whatever the Khalifa says is Islam. Whatever the Khalifa says is Allah, what Allah wants. Brothers and sisters, you see where I'm getting at here. Muawiyah, all that stuff. We want to get rid of him. We can't. Imam Hussain relinquishes. But this is what's happening in 20 years. So now we've learned a lesson as Shia. That what? That look, yes, sometimes you have no choice but to take a bandage approach. Imam Ali, Saqifa after Saqifa till Uthman is a bandage approach. And even more of a bandage is Imam Hassan versus Muawiyah. Yes. But we know now. Not that the Imams didn't know before, but it had to reach a point where bandage approach doesn't work anymore. Rip the band-aid off is the only way left. So here, what is Imam Hussain to do? This Imam Hussain who couldn't fight Muawiyah, I want to read this to you as well, it's interesting. Muawiyah writes a letter to him. Hey, I thought we had a peace treaty with each other. What is it that I'm hearing that you're trying to go against me? Because after Imam Hassan, 10 years Imam Hussain lived during the time of Muawiyah. Okay? Before Yazid came. Yes, Imam Hussain lived a life outside of Ashura too. For those of us who don't really read too much history, inshallah we read more. Imam Hussain lived 57 years. Okay? And so Ashura is not the only day he was alive. He was alive 10 years before that as well. With Muawiyah. He says to Muawiyah, when he gets this letter from Muawiyah, it's a famous one. He says, after praise to Allah and blessings upon the Prophet of Allah, I wish to inform you that I have received your letter, Muawiyah, in which you have mentioned that you have heard some reports about me which you detested. You were upset about, Muawiyah. You're upset at me, Hussain. And in your opinion, this was not expected of me. You have also mentioned that it is only Allah who guides the people towards righteousness. So Muawiyah is giving him dars akhlaq basically. And only He is the helper and support of one and all. You should know that reports concerning me have reached you through liars, backbiters, things like that. Don't believe these reports. I'm not going to go against you. But don't think it's because I like you. We had a treaty. I do not intend any war or rebellion against your rule. This is the important one. It is not that I consider not confronting you likable in the eyes of Allah. Neither do I fear divine retribution if I don't confront you. In other words, I am scared. Imam Hussain saying this in this letter. Muawiyah, I'm scared that if I don't fight you, what am I going to say to Allah on the Day of Judgment? I guess the one mission that Imam Hussain has is to fight Muawiyah, just like Imam Hassan's mission. Okay, so this is the context, brothers and sisters. These guys are not supposed to be there. On one hand. On the other hand, bandage approach doesn't work anymore. We know this. Now Yazid comes to power. This Yazid who comes to power is horrible. Why? I'll just share one thing with you. And this clock is right behind the camera, so I have to see how much time I have. I'll share one thing with you. Have you all heard of the incident of Harra? You probably have. A couple years after Ashura, 1 or 2 years after Ashura, 1 year, the people of Medina rose against Yazid, and they wanted to push a revolution forward. Okay? Why? Because they say Yazid, when what happened in Ashura, he wanted to save face. What did he do? He invited some of the grand companions of the Prophet that were in Medina, invited them to Sham to see Yazid. One of those individuals is Abdullah bin Hanzala. Hanzala is Ghasilul Malaika, the one that got shaheed in Uhud, who had to do ghusl. He had just gotten married, didn't get to, and then the Prophet said the angels are giving him ghusl. That person, his son, Abdullah. He's one of the ones that goes to Sham and sits with Yazid, checks him out. He comes back now. After he comes back, he says, what in the world was that? Yazid? Human or monster? Human or animal? This guy can't be our Khalifa. I just want to show you guys how bad this person was, Yazid. How problematic he was. Oh, what's his problem? Don't worry about it. We got to rise against them. And the incident of Harra and tragedy of Harra took place where they massacred the people of Medina. Massacred, bloodshed, rape, everything that the historians they have hayat to mention in their books. It was so bad. But the reason I'm saying all of this is to get to this part right here. When it's time to now fight, Yazid sends an army to Medina to fight those people who are revolting. This Abdullah stands up and speaks amongst the people. He says, look, let me tell you who Yazid is. He says, Ya qawm, wallahi ma kharajna. We left that gathering, that meeting with Yazid when he invited us. We left that gathering like looking over our shoulder, worrying that Allah is going to send down stones of like fire on our heads and kill us because we were with this individual. That's how bad he was. All I'll say is this, he says, رَجُلٌ يَنْكِحُ أُمَّهَاتِ الْأَوْلَادِ وَالْأَخَوَاتِ وَالْبَنَاتِ. Incest. He mentions this. يَشْرِبُ الْخَمْرِ. Drinks. I don't remember reports. Maybe you can bring this to my attention later. You don't really find reports of Muawiyah drinking openly. He says, this guy was drinking. وَيَدَعُ الصَّلَاةِ. He puts the salat aside altogether. This person is now ruling, brothers and sisters. I can't get to the other stuff, we don't have time. This person is now ruling. So let's go back again. Bandage approach works short term, but in the long run, hopefully things get better with that bandage approach. But if they don't, you have to rip the band-aid. There's no other choice. And then you have a person like this now in charge who's going to live probably 30, 40 years. And then Imam Hussain is now asked for bay'ah in this context. Brothers and sisters, if Imam Hussain had given bay'ah, Islam would have been lost forever. This is a person. Because Imam Hussain himself says it. He says, وَعَلَى الْإِسْلَامِ السَّلَامِ. Goodbye, Islam. إِذْ بُلِيَتِ الْأُمَّةِ بِرَاعٍ مِثِلْ يَزِيد. Because the ummah has someone like Yazid over them. 40 years of his rule. Now think about it. This is a cancer that's in Sham. But once Imam Hussain, who is in Hijaz, in Medina, gives his bay'ah, this cancer is now going to spread. For God's sake, everyone knew Imam Hassan was forced to give bay'ah, or to give the peace treaty, to sign the peace treaty. Everyone knew he was forced, yet later they said, oh, he was cool with Muawiyah. Think about it. What's going to happen if Imam Hussain gives bay'ah to Yazid and give Yazid 30, 40 years in this context? It's over, brothers and sisters. Game over. And so he can't give bay'ah. Look, what am I saying? Am I saying revolt? Am I saying he has to draw a sword? Am I saying he has to be massacred? I haven't even gotten there yet. He is not allowed to give bay'ah. وَمِثْلِي لَا يُبَايِعُ مِثْلَ يَزِيد. Very simple. The likes of me cannot give bay'ah, he says. But Imam Hussain, your father, your brother, they got along. They preserved their life. You preserve your life. He says that was the bandage approach. And we thought we would have a result. And we were right about that. We could have had the result. But when Imam Ali came to power, they didn't let him fix things because they gave him 3 civil wars. And in Nahj al-Balagha he says this. He says, I want to fix things and take them back to normal. The problem is I can't. Give me 1 year of no fighting and no war. It was all war. To the point that he has to leave Medina and move to Kufa. Which Khalifa moved there, the capital from Medina to anywhere else? This man has no choice but to move. So yeah, the bandage approach was good because we were supposed to change things when I'm Khalifa. But when they don't let me do what I'm supposed to do and rather they hand it over to Muawiyah. Yeah, no more bandage approach here. Because brothers and sisters, I got to tell you this, and we've talked about this before. If Imam Hussain leaves this dunya, having given bay'ah to Yazid, no one can fix it. Who cares about Imam Sajjad? The Shia do. No one else does. He is nowhere close to the caliber and credibility of Imam Hussain in the eyes of the masses at that time. Who cares about Al-Baqir and Al-Sadiq and Al-Rida? No one can fix it. So that's where you pull the band-aid off, and it's going to be very, very painful. So let's go back now. We said, it is the lack of bay'ah that stopped this cancer from spreading. If the bay'ah was given, then Sham would have, Medina and Mecca would have turned into another Sham. Everyone's like, hey, Imam Hussein's okay with this. Then that means we're okay. And this will go to Medina and Mecca now. You won't have a person like Abdullah bin Handala, who comes and fights Yazid, and him and his 8 sons get killed, and all the other people that get killed in Medina. You won't have that. You'll have, welcome to, oh Yazid, welcome to our city. Tell us what Islam is all about, because you have the okay from this person. So brothers and sisters, this brings me to the second part now. The first thing that we talked about was, let us use our imaginations and see what would have happened if bay'ah was given. Cancer all over the place. Okay. That is to, we said all of this to prove that just not giving bay'ah was what saved Islam. And that brings me to the second stage of this whole conversation that we're having. And that is, let us think about this. What if Imam Hussain had died a natural death? They came to him, they said, give bay'ah. He said, no matter what, I'm not going to give bay'ah. I don't approve of him. And 10 days later, he passed away, let's say. And everyone knew he passed away a normal, natural death. Can anyone after Imam Hussain come and say, oh, look, Imam Hussain was okay with Yazid, and so we have his approval. Let's let this cancer move from Sham all the way to Medina and Mecca and Kufa and everywhere else. Can anyone say that? If Imam Hussain passes away 10 days later, 1 month later, 4 days later, whatever, does Yazid have his stamp of approval or not? He said, no. Why am I saying all of this? To show that just the fact that he didn't give his approval is the active ingredient in Islam being protected and saved. Now, because it's so important to him and he understands this, correct? He's willing to give his life, and he does give his life, and that amplifies his lack of approval, his lack of bay'ah towards what Yazid was doing. And so if we're going to look at it like this is the minimalist approach, brothers and sisters. This is the minimalist approach. There's a maximal one tomorrow. But if we have this approach even, that even can assume that there was no Karbala that happened even, Islam was protected because there is no stamp of approval. And so if we take this perspective and we say that Imam Hussain, but he left Medina and he said, I'm leaving for Amr bil Ma'ruf and Nahi anil Munkar. I want to reform. This is what reform would mean. That he is now ripping the band-aid off. He says, I'm not going to act like I'm okay, just like my father was forced to, or my brother was forced to, or even I was forced to during Muawiyah's time. It's not time for that anymore. I am doing Amr bil Ma'ruf by not being okay anymore, not giving my approval. You all said my dad was okay with it. You all said my brother was okay with it. You said I was okay with it during Muawiyah's time. Fine. But from now on, I'm letting you know I'm not okay with it. Although I wasn't even okay with it before, but we had no choice. We had to keep our mouth shut because of... That's the minimalist. I want reform. Yes, reform will mean that something has to change. And so I am now stopping this whole trend of getting along with people, because now is not the time anymore. Even if my father was alive today, he would do that. Even if Imam Hussain was alive, he would probably do the same thing. So that is the active ingredient, brothers and sisters, but there's a price to pay for all of this. Sallallahu alayka ya Aba Abdullah. This always has gotten my attention, brothers and sisters, that in that famous story of Ubaidullah bin Hurr al-Ju'fi, the one who said, I was trying to avoid Imam Hussain, and eventually our paths crossed, and I told Imam Hussain, I'm not going to help you, but let me give you this horse, let me give you this sword, whatever it was. This has always caught my attention and breaks my heart, that Imam Hussain alayhi salam, when he comes to the tent of that individual, the individual says, I saw Hussain at my door, and there were all these kids around him. Imam Hussein's relationship with these children, what it was and what happened, to the point that they say, like, look, these kids, all of them look at Imam Hussain as their father. Okay, this is the relationship of Hussain with those children. Who would have ever thought that a few days after, these same children are going to be running on hot sands, not knowing what's going on, like they don't understand what's going on. What happened? Where's Abbas to come protect us? None of this anymore. thorns going into their feet. Now this caravan goes with whatever is left of these children to Sham and Kufa, and then returns to Medina eventually. But then they say there was one person in this caravan that kind of stands out from the rest, that was left in Sham. One of these children, that Ayatollah Tabrizi says Imam Hussain left someone in Sham, so that later on people don't say, oh, the caravan of Imam Hussain was not taken to Sham. No, I have a sign there that my family was taken to Sham. Who is this? Bibi Ruqayya alayha salam. And so this caravan returns to Medina later on, but without this little child. I'm just going to read to you what these accounts say. It says that Imam Sajjad says we were put somewhere where there was no covering over us. And we were in the heat of the night, of the day, and in the night the cold would bother us. These are the ruins of Sham, they say. Now in the middle of the night, one night, they say this child wakes up, Bibi Ruqayya, and keeps calling out, Aina Abi al-Hussain? Where is my father Hussain? Ra'aytuhu as-sa'a fil manam. I just saw him in my dreams. Brothers and sisters, it's hard to cover things up from these children. You've done your best so this child doesn't remember. Maybe you told her, oh, your father went on a journey, he'll be back, all this. But then when she sees him in a dream, everything goes back to square one again. She remembers her father. Now think that this mother or father, what are they going to do when this child is asking for that parent that they've lost? Brothers and sisters, they say that the news reached Yazid. He says, what's going on? Well, this child remembering the father and is crying for the father. They say, oh, no problem. Take the head of her father to her. And so they say they put this head in the container and they cover it up and they take it to this baby, this child. And it says here, قَالَتْ مَا هَذَا الرَّأْسِ? Whose head is this? Brothers and sisters, you know what that means? That this head had been so disfigured that this child cannot identify whose head this is, brothers and sisters. قَالَتْ مَا هَذَا الرَّأْسِ? They said the ra'as of your father. And so she says that فَرَفَعَتْهُ حَاضِنَةً لَهُ. She picked up this head while in her arms, hugging it, taking care of it. Oh father, they didn't take care of your head, I'll take care of your head. And she's speaking to this father, and she says to him, Ya abatah, man alladhi khadabaka bidima'ik? Who has colored your beard with your blood? Man alladhi qata'a waridak? Who is it that has cut your veins, O father, or your veins? And it says it reaches a point that as they're hearing this child talk to her father, all of a sudden she puts her cheek on the cheek of Baba. Before you know it, there is no more noise coming. Has she fallen asleep? No. She has passed away out of grief with her cheek on the cheek of her father. This reminds me of Karbala. There was another cheek that was put on a cheek. They say Ali and Al-Akbar fell to the ground. They cut him to pieces. Abu Abdullah comes to the body of Ali and Al-Akbar. Ala al-dunya ba'daka al-afa. I don't want this dunya in life anymore over after you, O Ali. He puts his cheek on the cheek of Ali. He goes silent. They start cheering and laughing and mocking. They say, Hussain died. فَقَطَّعُوهُ بِسُيُوفِهِمْ إِرْبًا إِرْبًا ألا لعنة الله على القوم الظالمين وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون والعاقبة للمتقين. مات الحسين. يا حسين يا حسين يا حسين.
Hussain, Ya Hussain, Ya Hussain, Ya Hussain, Ya Hussain, Ya Hussain, Ya Hussain. जिंदा में सकीना को याद आया वो सीना. जिंदा में सकीना को یاد آیا وہ سینہ زندہ میں سکینہ کو، یاد آیا وہ سینہ جس سینے پہ سوتی تھی، ہے جس سینے پہ سوتی تھی معصوم سکینہ، زندہ میں سکینہ کو یاد آیا وہ سینہ، زندہ میں سکینہ کو یاد آیا وہ سینہ، کہتے سے ذرا ظالم بابا کو نہ روؤں گی، میں گود میں مادر کی آرام سے سوؤں گی، بے رحم لعینوں نے ہے بے رحم لعینوں نے فریاد سنی نا، زندہ میں سکینہ کو یاد آیا وہ سینہ، زندہ میں سکینہ کو حسینہ، ہے موت کی خاموشی تاریکی یہ زندہ میں، کیا جرم کیا لوگوں معصوم سی مہمان، کوئی اور تو معصومہ ہے کوئی اور تو معصومہ، یوں قید ہوئی نا، زندہ میں سکینہ کو یاد آیا وہ سینہ، زندہ میں سکینہ کو سینہ، ہے وقت چمکتا تھا کربل میں مدینے میں، تعویذ کی مانند تھا شبیر کے سینے میں، گم ہو گیا وہ کیسے ہے گم ہو گیا وہ کیسے، زندہ میں نگینا، زندہ میں سکینہ کو یاد آیا وہ سینہ، زندہ یاد آیا وہ سینہ، ہے موت بھی حیران تھی معصوم کی میت پہ، افسوس رہی کرتی احمد کی رعیت پہ، تھا موت کے چہرے پہ ہے تھا موت کے چہرے پہ غیرت کا پسینہ، زندہ میں سکینہ کو یاد آیا وہ سینہ، زندہ یاد آیا وہ سینہ، سردار سکینہ کو زندہ میں دفن کر کے سجاد یہ کہتے تھے نا کفن ملا مر کے، تا حشر رلائے گی ہے تا حشر رلائے گی تیری موت سکینہ، زندہ میں سکینہ کو یاد آیا وہ سینہ، زندہ یاد آیا وہ سینہ، یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین مولا حق امام، یا حسن یا حسین مولا حق امام، یا حسن یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین، بیمار تھا وہ عابد بیمار تھا، جلنے سے جو لاچار تھا، جلنے سے جو لاچار تھا، اور شام کا بازار تھا، اور شام کا بازار تھا، مصطفیٰ کی بیٹی
إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. What are you doing? الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله اللهم صل على محمد. أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح حي على خير العمل حي على خير العمل الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما.
الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله أشهد أن عليا ولي الله أشهد أن عليا وأبناءه المعصومين حجج الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح حي على خير العمل حي على خير العمل قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله الله أكبر بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. أستغفر الله. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. بحول الله وقوته أقوم وأقعد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. كذلك الله ربي. الله أكبر. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. أستغفر الله. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. الحمد لله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بحول الله وقوته أقوم وأقعد. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. سبحان الله. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. أستغفر الله. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. الحمد لله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. السلام عليك أيها النبي ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام علينا وعلى عباد الله الصالحين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر.
إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد اللهم إني أسألك موجبات رحمتك وعزائم مغفرتك والنجاة من النار ومن كل بلية والفوز بالجنة ورضوان في دار السلام وجوار نبيك محمد عليه وعليه السلام اللهم ما بنا من نعمة فمنك لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين آمين رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا ونبينا محمد وآله الطاهرين.
الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله أشهد أن محمد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله أشهد أن عليا ولي الله وأنه حجة الله صلوات الله وسلامه عليه حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح حي على خير العمل حي على خير العمل قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله الله أكبر بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إنا أعطيناك الكوثر فصل لربك وانحر إن شانئك هو الأبتر الله أكبر سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده سمع الله لمن حمده الله أكبر سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده الله أكبر أستغفر الله الله أكبر سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده الله أكبر بحول الله وقوته أقوم وأقعد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد كذلك الله ربي الله أكبر اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب الله أكبر سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده سمع الله لمن حمده الله أكبر سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده الله أكبر أستغفر الله الله أكبر سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده الله أكبر الحمد لله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد بحول الله وقوته أقوم وأقعد الله أكبر سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده سمع الله لمن حمده الله أكبر سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده الله أكبر أستغفر الله الله أكبر سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده الله أكبر بحول الله وقوته أقوم وأقعد الله أكبر سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده سمع الله لمن حمده الله أكبر سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده الله أكبر أستغفر الله الله أكبر سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد الله أكبر الحمد لله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد السلام عليك أيها النبي ورحمة الله وبركاته السلام علينا وعلى عباد الله الصالحين السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر
إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين